It's a sound that echoes all over the region as crews slowly scrape away the evidence of a true disaster. Flames had stripped the landscape clean of life, leaving chimneys to stand guard over a moonscape. Hello, I'm Dave Corvassier in Sonoma County, California, in a neighborhood that was once thriving with families and their children and their dreams, and then one night, it all just disappeared in flames. And that's when first responders started pouring in.
You can knock this down, otherwise it's gone. Hey, let's get out of here.
For the first time, we see the early hours of the firefight through their eyes, using their hastily snapped photos and video, and hearing their words.
It was like a waterfall of fire.
Trees are exploding.
Born as a disaster right off the bat.
Crying for resources, losing structures.
Had that feeling that we really need to get out of here.
Things just blowing across 4 lanes of freeway.
The trees were rocking branches with leaves on them full of fire.
We got beat up for 2 weeks.
Stories that you'll live telling for the rest of your life.
So you had the roar, the heat, the flames, and then these huge explosions.
It looked like an atom bomb. The whole world seemed on fire.
Sheriff 1, stand forward. We need to make a priority evacuation now, Mark West Springs area.
Help pours in.
My husband walked back from the Finley Center and watched our house burn down.
Can't drive down 101 and look around without crying.
Fire's right there in the valley coming over the ridge, so I don't know what I'm gonna have left, but I got my family, we're all alive and we're together, and that's all that matters.
I cry for the hurt that these people sometimes have. They need prayers. They need love.
The wine country fires killed over 40 people, destroyed thousands of homes, but could have been so much worse were it not for the very first men and women, shorthanded as they were, that raced to be on the line in those first 24 hours.
Hurricane gusts came through the Napa Valley. I don't think I've ever heard that in my lifetime. We were getting calls left and right, hazards in the roadway, tree downs, branches in the roadway.
Calistoga firefighter Jaime Orozco was one of the first to reach the Tubbs fire minutes after it began.
Close to 80-mile-an-hour wind gusts in all different directions. It was just a wall of fire.
The wind was really blowing.
Marty Ammon arrives from Sonoma County minutes later and snaps off some quick pictures. You hear trouble in that wind.
I was going back and forth, putting out spot fires like underneath the engine, all the row of engines, and up in the trees above us. The street was green with leaves that were stripped off trees. It even felt slippery because we were driving on so many leaves. The way the wind was blowing, the ember cast, and watching that one hillside just light off like it was napalmed, and you could feel the heat. And we were still maybe an eighth of a mile away.
You look at your partner and you're just almost in amazement of just what you're seeing.
Jaime and Marty and hundreds of others make a snap decision. Don't try to fight the fires. First, save lives.
We need to get people out. Pound on door, let them know, hey, whatever you can grab, we have 5 minutes.
It's on both sides.
Jumping across the road, hot winds.
The flames race west, running smack dab into the Mountain Volunteer Fire Department west of Calistoga.
Power lines are right above you.
Right above me?
Yep.
It was sheeting across the road, burning into the trees. The chief was thinking along the lines of, we got to go out there and see what kind of homes we can protect. These are our people, this is our community, and we want to help save not just lives, but their property. It became quickly apparent evacuations were needed immediately.
Clint St. Martin is a Marine who saw duty in Iraq, but says the fire was much worse.
In combat, you have more of a hidden enemy. It makes the fire a little more real because it's not hidden. It's right there. You can see it. You can feel it. It's in your face.
He finds what's left of a car engine, just a molten blob, sobering evidence of how hot the fire burned. Sadly, while St. Martin was out fighting fires, his own home was destroyed.
When I looked down, I saw the house, and just couldn't believe it. Suddenly I'm looking at the foundation and just a giant pile of ash that you see here behind me. And then just like the memories you have, thinking about all the work that I put in this place over the last 8 years, it just rocked me in my core, and I fell to my knees and just, I could feel my face heating up and my eyes welling up, and it just hit me.
He was not alone. The fires destroyed 120 homes of fire personnel and many others in law enforcement.
It almost felt like the Marines, you know, if somebody gets hit, right, you don't have a whole lot of time to really process that right there. You can deal with that later, but right now you've got a job to do. We've got a lot of other fires to put out.
The flames had already blown more than halfway to Santa Rosa as Sonoma County Sheriff's Deputy Brandon Cutting goes door to door to get people out.
This very first video is up on Porter Creek.
Sheriff's office!
His body camera is rolling.
Sheriff's office!
So when I went up to the porch and I'm walking around it, the fire was burning all around the house. It was very smoky, but it was sort of calm at that moment.
These people made it out alive. Their house was destroyed. Weeks later, he retraces that drive, east from Santa Rosa, up Mark West Road, then up narrow dirt driveways for evacuations. Imagine this in the dark, in the smoke, surrounded by flames. Cutting and a dozen other deputies kept this up all night.
Where are you at?
And then as the video goes on, I'm up off Mark West, and that's where one of my fellow deputies was doing a rescue on the woman who wasn't able to walk on her own. I saw the lights off on the distance.
Come on, she's disabled. All right, let me get her feet.
So I jumped out of the car to see what was going on.
Her husband's right behind you.
And as I came around the corner, that's where he was dragging the woman.
Sheriff 1, stand 4, we're doing a carry out.
Ready?
Hold up.
She was definitely afraid.
There's a house on fire. Let's go. Oh, you gotta get her up. Okay, hold on. There we go. Okay. Watch your leg. Sir, you gotta go!
And so she got out okay?
She did. I've talked to the family. They're all doing well. They were both having a hard time getting out of there.
And Cutting, who suffers from asthma, was having his own problems with the smoke. But he headed east into the heart of the fire.
When I first came into the fire further east of us here, all you could see was the glow. As I came on Mark West and I came around the corner, then you could see this was all on fire. Looking that direction, the fire just came right down this hill and just continued moving, and then eventually pushed north and west and south. I mean, it started fanning out.
Now the flames were chasing even first responders off the mountain.
Sheriff 1, stand 4, we need to make a priority evacuation now, Mark West Springs area. Copy. We all have to evacuate the hill, so we're coming off now.
They race through a snow of ash and embers, winds blowing the ember wash towards Santa Rosa.
Units up on the hill, be advised, Mark West is nearly impassable at this point.
Moments later, he jumps out, forcing a driver to turn around, away from the fire. And the driving through flames goes on. Cutting almost hit by another driver.
Don't hit me.
The flames are on either side of the road. The trees are exploding. What you're seeing with the sparks are the pine trees and the oak trees are just exploding. You'd see it, you'd hear it, and then you'd get covered in this little fine ash. My car, when I came out, it literally looked like somebody had taken a ball of coal and just thrown it all over my car.
4-9, stand 4, don't pass. Do not pass.
But when you're driving, it was hard to see. It was hot. The plastic on the sides of the cars got melted. I talked to some of our fleet guys afterwards, and they had said that, you know, the air intake on these cars with heat and smoke are supposed to shut off. Thank God they didn't.
And they keep pushing the evacuations.
Sonoma County Sheriff's Office, this is a mandatory evacuation order. Leave your homes.
Near Highway 101, the evacuees create a traffic mess.
Fire everywhere.
It was fire under us, over us, all around us.
It's like a waterfall of fire going across the road.
Engines falling, they stay back there, don't come through. It's fire all over the road.
Volunteer crews from Monterey head up Mark West, hitting walls of flames.
All of a sudden a tree fell and hit my windshield, cracked the window, and it went over the top of my truck and hit the fire truck and put a hole in the windshield.
There was a disabled vehicle in front of us, so we were all stuck in this firestorm.
They got moving again, the focus still on saving lives.
There's not much you can do. You can't stop it. You can work the edges. That was the main push, is to get people moving, save people. And then later on, start trying to save houses.
That would be tough.
So this is my neighbor's house with the big, it's down to trees. That was all gonna go. And this whole side of the block's gone.
By the time the flames reach East Santa Rosa, embers from the Tubbs fire just rain down on the urban landscape, blasting into whole subdivisions. Larry Broderick spent hours spraying down homes in his neighborhood before he had to give up and leave.
There's my neighbor's house right back up to my house, so my house is gone.
His drive out is just heartbreaking.
No fire trucks anywhere. God bless America.
Help starts pouring in from fire stations all across the region. A strike team from Berkeley rolls up, astounded by what they saw.
The first image of the fire we had was the glow on the horizon. So we thought we were seeing was a wildland fire that was just kind of cresting the hilltops. That was our first impression.
From miles away, they could see the glow.
You know, those are coming out of the structures.
The orders were to stage outside Kmart, but Kmart was almost gone.
Wow, that whole Kmart's just going up, isn't it?
That probably was the moment where we realized this thing was big.
Fireman Michael Shukin rolls video as they head to a new staging area. Down the street, a gas station goes in minutes.
They don't usually explode because of the way they're designed, but still, we got a little bit nervous being parked in front of it.
Oh, God, yeah, look at that. I can actually feel that heat, Kyle. You feel that? Oh, my God. Wow, it is blowing out that side.
We would go by certain areas where you could hear clearly ammunition burning off. And you could hear at a certain point hundreds or thousands of rounds of ammunition going off.
Hearing over the radio, any available unit. And
Tanea Fleckenstein is a former firefighter turned photographer. She raced to reports of another major fire near Nuns Canyon Road in Sonoma Valley. She captures chilling images as the embers race across Highway 12. She turns the corner to see flames threatening Dunbar School, where she works part-time.
And then I drove around the back and I saw the flag, and it just was one of those, images that just gets your heart. And the fact that it was already at half-mast was even more powerful. Like somehow the universe knew that there was going to be this tragedy.
Trees were rocking and limbs were falling.
Fifth-generation rancher and contractor John Saris quickly jumped in a water tanker and raced up Nuns Ranch Road.
I don't get too nervous, but the wind was blowing so hard it was rocking this truck. I had to roll the windows up because I was getting fire inside the truck. I was stamping on embers inside.
I could see the glow coming out of Nuns Canyon already.
CAL FIRE Captain Sean Jerry immediately recognized this was a big one, and not the only one.
Placed a resource order. I think it was 25 engines I asked for, 8 bulldozers. I didn't get any. I asked them again. I said, confirming unable to fill any of the resource order. And they said, affirmative. You're the 9th large incident going within the unit right now.
Indeed, giant fires were burning in Napa, Sonoma, Solano, Lake, and Mendocino counties, taxing resources to the max. Within days, crews, trucks, dozers, and copters from 17 different states would arrive. But on this night, just a handful were on the lines, and the wind was winning.
Hurricane force winds.
to be able to pick it up again.
It was the Diablo winds. They're basically offshore winds, creates tunnels of wind like a funnel.
With the winds the way they were, almost anything you were doing, it didn't matter.
Mother Nature really was in control.
It'd get into the oak trees, and those would just ember cast everywhere.
There were golf ball to apple-sized embers. They were floating around in the air probably half a mile in front of the fire.
So you'd have new fires starting.
Up on narrow Nuns Canyon Road, the evidence of the fight is everywhere. Crews tried to box it in, tried to keep it east of Highway 12, but it raced faster than they could.
Even driving down the road, hard to catch up with it. Caught with the wind and it's off to the races.
Embers sprayed across Highway 12, within minutes ravaging homes on Warm Springs Road in Glen Ellen.
Rescue 1.
It was here Ted Hassler and Paul Pendrencelli drove straight into hell.
Turn the lights on, siren on and off intermittently if everyone was asleep to wake them up. Fire, heat, flames, smoke.
They gingerly roll over embers from a transformer that had just blown.
I said I've been doing this job for 20 plus years and I don't often get scared, but that's as close as I'm gonna get to, should we even drive through this? There wasn't any fire apparatus to put on Warm Springs. We were it. That area was gonna do what it was gonna do, and we were just trying to get people out.
Minutes later, they hit a power line draped across the road. Listen again. You can hear them hit.
We do hit a line. You got to think that everything is dead at that point. All the electric current that's going through those lines. I didn't feel scared for lines.
They had run out of fire engines, had no water, just a rescue truck. All they could do was get people out.
It was house after house. Usually you don't have time to shoot video when you're fighting fire, but we were in a fire apparatus that had no firefighting capability besides telling people to leave. So I had time to pick up the camera and want to document this, because I know it was more intense than the video shows. You just can't capture how intense it was. Very hot. Even driving as fast as we were, the radiant heat that's coming off of all those houses. Definitely felt it in the cab.
By daylight, some winds had eased. But the flames were just relentless. Exhausted crews were thin on equipment, and it was too smoky to fly.
We got to do what we got to do with what we have.
So up on the ridges,
get him, Nilsy.
In those first 24 hours, it became a dozer war.
That's when I made the decision that, somebody's got to get ahead of this fire.
A legend on the dozers, Nils Derrickson was up on Cavedale Road, trying to protect the city of Sonoma.
Slow it down, stop it, whatever we can do, so that it doesn't impact the city of Sonoma.
There were lives and history to protect. Nils' ancestors first came to these hills in 1850. He knows these mountains.
We may not have saved as many homes as I would have liked, but we definitely slowed it down.
But a new spot fire almost stopped him in his tracks.
And then the spot fire occurred over the ridge line, kind of put an uneasy feeling in our guts. I can see the column starting to come over us. I kind of had that feeling like, yeah, we really need to get out of here. Start to turn the tractor around and I go to shift it into forward. That's when the tractor died. So the tractor's not running at all and I don't understand why.
As he's calling about his mechanical issue, we recognize this fire on the other side of the ridge.
Now it's really serious. We had some head fire coming towards us. We need immediate air support. They're busy. They're all over the place.
Unable to get that air support, he prepared to abandon the rig. Then Nils MacGyvered a fix.
I start assessing the situation why the tractor won't run, and there's fuel running out of this fitting out of the bottom of the fuel tank. So I had to whittle down a stick and shove it in there to stop the fuel from leaking out onto the tractor.
Up and running again, the dozers keep at it as more equipment arrives. With easing winds, crews were finally trying to save structures, bringing down fire-damaged trees.
There we go.
Coming to the other side. If you can knock this down, otherwise it's gone.
In all the confusion of the first 24 hours, many fire bosses gave a simple marching order.
get out there and do some good. Just find somewhere to make a difference and go do it.
Fire Captain Gabe Sternis says they tried everything.
We were using every trick in the book. We did quite a bit of backfiring to try to check this thing. We had sustained winds of 60 miles an hour for hours. It really just pushes these things so fast and hard. You could have 1,000 fire trucks in front of that fire and you're not going to stop it.
Gabe and his crew nearly got trapped more than once. Listen as he frantically pulls crews away from this home.
Hey, let's get out of here. Go, let's get out of here. This way.
By the time we got the engine into that driveway, the fire had made such a progression and was still continuing to advance with such intensity. It changed my mind. It caught me by surprise how fast that thing got into the backside of that structure. The more I looked at it, the more I said, this is not a safe area for us to be.
By daybreak, the world was stunned at the destruction. Whole neighborhoods were just wiped off the map. Tanea returned to Santa Rosa to make a devastating discovery.
This whole neighborhood was just roaring. Houses were catching on fire, just from the radiant heat.
That's when she saw several first responders silhouetted by towering flames.
There's a bunch of police officers. They were standing there. There was two or three cop cars, and so there was police officers. And I looked back, and you could see the blue lights of the sheriff's officers blocking the intersection again, trying to keep people out. I was just here. This was all fine 2 hours ago. How does that happen? There was a lot more emotion in this than that first 24 hours for me than I'd experienced at other fires.
It's extra personal for her knowing all these first responders. Her own husband, Paul, is a CAL FIRE battalion chief doing battle those first hours on a ridge above Windsor and Healdsburg.
That was about maybe 16 hours in. He was just covered in blood, sweat, and tears, literally. He had hid behind his truck at one point to some flames coming up before he could get around to the other side and get in it. And when he'd stood up to see if everything was okay, he'd taken the mirror out on his nose. So he had this huge gash on his nose. He's got blood, smoke, his hair's going all different ways. Didn't even realize he had blood all over his face. They don't think about themselves. They're just intent on doing what they can to help anybody.
Nearly 24 hours after it began, Sebastopol photographer Ananda Fierro got into the burn zone with her camera.
I decided to walk into Coffee Park area less than 24 hours after the burn. There was still smoldering coming up from the ground and still areas where there was patchy fire underneath soot and gas line fires as well. The images I got were of the day, walking through parts of Coffee Park. Mementos that were left behind, lawn furniture and lawn artifacts such as statuary, cars burnt out, motorcycles burnt out, barbecue, grills, and pits sitting there. There were only chimney stacks and burnt out cars. Gasoline fires were actually lighting the wreckage of vehicles and chimney stacks and burnt out oak trees. It had that eerie effect, almost haunting.
At the end of those first 24 hours, the first crews were still at it. Many would not get any real sleep for 3 or 4 days. By week's end, tens of thousands of reinforcements poured in. Instant cities sprang up with fire crews from all over the West. And something amazing happened. Whole communities dropped everything and helped out. Celebrities and everyday people fed the crews, housed the fire victims, and some, like Mike Benzinger and John Saris, just grabbed a hose or a water truck and refused to leave.
Beltane's on fire, they need help, so I threw my pants on and I jumped in and took off up Highway 12.
Frozen, like I was in fear. I didn't know what to do. Finally, my wife pushed me on the back of the shoulder and she said to me, "Do something." And I got in my car and drove down the hill and helped fight the fire.
The fires would rage for weeks. And only when the last flame flickered out would those first crews on the line have time to share their stories with the world.
I had people that told me they weren't going to leave their homes. And I literally had watched the house above that home just go up in flames.
There's a house in Glen Ellen I grew up as a kid, and I turned the corner on that and it was already to the ground.
As soon as we got out of that firestorm, I turned to the driver and said, "Thank you for keeping us alive."
Obviously, you can't forget the first night where it was just fire all around you.
To have a fire that big in your backyard, you're never going to forget that.
We got a call from a captain to see if we could check on some pets. So we went to this one address, and there were these 2 kittens just hanging out, waiting for somebody to show up. They were at the only house that was left. All the others around were burned up. So we brought a couple of pounds of cat food because people donated all kinds of food and pet food. And so we went out and checked on this place, and there they were. Just feel for everybody's pets.
Anybody that could do anything to help anywhere, whatever it was, they were doing it.
I'm absolutely amazed by the amount of people that have come together in this community. It really warms my heart.
Firefighter jumps out of his Honda Accord, his personal vehicle. I said, Sid, what are you doing? He said, I'm fighting fire. We're going to save Mulesberries. I said, all right, well, what do you need? So he pops his trunk open, and he's got 3 lengths of hose in his trunk, a nozzle, and a hydrant wrench, and he says, grab that hydrant. It's my favorite story because it's the heart of what everything was. Everybody was doing anything they can. Here's a guy who he doesn't have an engine, but he's going to go out no matter what and do something. And there's hundreds of those stories.
We wanted to be there. This is our community, these are our people. This is what we were meant to do. This is what we signed up to do. Having lost my house just gave me that much more of a burn to want to do it and want to get out there and save the homes that were left and help the people that needed help.
In the days and weeks following the fire, the thank you started popping up. Obviously, the community loved their first responders. They had a special place in their heart for the men and women who were called to go and do good in those first frantic 24 hours. Thanks for watching. I'm Dave Courvoisier.